Hi, thanks for joining me again on The Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis. Today we're heading over to Napa Valley. Let's go.
One side of the winery, look at the vines, look at the other side where the reserve is, and you'd think you're in two different wine regions in the world, right? And they're that different for the same grape and the same rootstock and clone. So you have everything being the same, the soil is what's completely different.
My guest, as you may have noticed, is Ted Henry of Groth Vineyards and Winery in Napa Valley's Oakville appellation. I've interviewed Ted before, the first time in 2014 when he worked at Jarvis Estate on the southeastern end of Napa Valley. The entire winemaking facility is contained within 45,000 square feet of underground tunnel that features a waterfall and dramatic lighting. It's a stunning setting. When Ted moved to Clos du Val in the highly touted Stag's Leap district a couple of years later, I reached out to him again. Clos du Val wine was included in the famed Paris tasting of 1976. Ted was kind enough to host my family who were visiting while we did the interview. That was kind of him. Then I noticed he moved to Groth Vineyards and Winery 2 years ago, but I didn't consider another interview. Not that Groth doesn't deserve the attention, I just didn't want to keep bugging him. Then I noticed 4 wines from Clos du Val landed on Decanter Magazine's list of the top 50 wines of the world. I knew Ted made those wines. So how could I pass up another opportunity to sit with Ted and congratulate him on that incredible achievement? Which brings us to my third interview with the humble, easygoing Ted Henry. You'll learn about the resilient Groth Vineyards and Winery, why he fits in there so well, and hear a prophetic statement he made back in 2017. Beforehand, let me thank my local sponsor, Sonoma Clean Power. For those of you in the area, learn how your actions can make a greater impact with clean, renewable energy at poweringeverydaymoments.org. That's poweringeverydaymoments.org. Now, here's my interview with Ted at Groth Vineyards. When I reached out to you to do this interview, and due to your slow response initially, which I understood because it was harvest time, I just had this feeling that you're rolling your eyes like, oh, you want to talk with me again?
Well, we got new material to talk about now, so of course, makes sense.
That's true. Yeah. But here's the reason I wanted to talk with you. Last June, I was drawn to Decanter Magazine's annual World Wine Awards article. Now, Decanter is not as popular here in the U.S. as it is globally. They're a British magazine, and they're huge. Not many people read it here as much, but over there it's the go-to publication. And to my amazement, as I was scrolling through them, among the many award-winning wines from all over the world were 4 wines from Clos du Val. I would think that's freaking huge to be part of that large group of international wines.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't terribly familiar with it. Like you said, Decanter is a little bit more Euro-based, Eurocentric. I did have some people from Clos du Val reach out and tell me about it and kind of, hey, congratulations on these wines. But yeah, that article came out after I had left the winery, and so it was kind of after the fact kind of thing. But I'm definitely proud of what the team and myself accomplished there. There was a lot of people involved from the vineyard management side and consulting viticulturists and everything to really take the vineyards at Clos du Val and take them to the next level. And I think that was done over a multi-year endeavor that had some great results. So I'm really proud of those wines, and I'm glad that Decanter enjoyed them.
So the word just got leaked out to you. It wasn't a big thing. So you didn't have this, wow, that's incredible, that's amazing.
I really didn't. I heard a couple bits and pieces about it here and there, and then friends would send me forward like an email that they got about it or what have you. I just kind of heard a few things, but it's a great honor, great for the winery, great for them, and.
Well, let me get more detailed. The 2019 Stag's Leap Estate Cab Franc won a Platinum Award, which is better than gold. And your 2019 Herondale Vineyard Cabernet was a Best of Class winner. Did you know that?
I think, that sounds familiar now that you say it. That Herondale, it's a phenomenal. That was probably one of the most amazing vineyard, plots there, that Herondale. So that doesn't surprise me. It's great that it was recognized. The Cabernet Franc was always something that was a specialty kind of grape for me at that property. And I mentioned when we were kind of looking around here at Groth, that's actually the reason why I planted an acre of Cabernet Franc here in Oakville last year, to be able to get that grape again in my fermenting tanks and have a chance to play with it.
That's right. What's more is when we met in 2017 at Clos du Val last, near the end of the interview, you were telling me about the changes that were going on at the winery and in the vineyards. And you said something like, these wines are going to be even better in the coming years. And it only took 2 years for that statement to become prophetic.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it was definitely a group effort. A lot of people involved in making that happen, but those wines did change. It's funny, the timing, like you said, if it was 2017 was right at the time when that was actually coming to fruition, and so that was exciting. It was good to see that happen. I think there's probably more stability, less drastic change needed to what I'm doing now at Groth than at that time. I think we had changed a lot back then, because I believe at 2015, 16 or whatever, at Clos du Val, the wines were not a stage. They were kind of a lot of purchased fruits. It wasn't a lot of focus on the real gems that they had. And so that's really what changed, just focusing on things like that Herondale and celebrating what a nice wine it was. So.
One thing I noticed when you started here, they're now referring to you as Director of Winegrowing. And at Clos du Val, you were Director of Winemaking. Now, I know titles can be inexplicit at times. There's a certain ambiguity to them. But are you now more focused on growing than you were before?
Yes. So that is something that's kind of a Groth thing. And I think it goes back to sort of a European model. I noticed that I was recently in Bordeaux, and it was interesting because well, not everywhere, I suppose, but the people that I was dealing with, you would go in the vineyard, and this guy was talking about in this interview, like talking about, hey, tell us about your wine this year and what plots you're growing out here. And they said, yeah, yields. We were seeing yields look like they're up, and they said, yeah, we will grow a lot of wine this year. And it was kind of interesting because it's the seamless transition between the vineyard that's growing the grapes that become the wine. Where the traditional kind of California Napa Valley thing for most wineries has been two separate entities. You've got someone growing the grapes, and they have their own priorities, and then the winery is waiting for the grapes to show up, and they're not really involved terribly with it until they decide the date that they're going to pick the grapes. So it's something that the Groth family wanted to have as a title intentionally, so that I do run the vineyard department here as well, so that the vineyard management team's reporting to me, so that I can really I can avoid those conflicts of interest, whether intentional or not. Usually they're not, right? So it's but often some things are done because, well, this is going to be more efficient in the vineyard, but if it doesn't produce better wine, maybe it's not worth doing that particular thing, right? So I can look at that holistically and say, yeah, no, we're going to do it this way because at the end of the day, that's going to be a better bottle of wine.
Yeah, I noticed reading Suzanne's comments when you got hired that she certainly appreciates your farming practices, because she said she recognizes your passion for single vineyard and estate wines and knowledge of organic farming, and felt your techniques will help further Groth's mission of continually improving their unique wines of place through incremental advancements in farming and winemaking. Wines of place, you hear that a lot, and also with incremental wine advancements. I mean, every wine grower, every winemaker is making advancements every year, but are they always positive?
No, that's very true. And sometimes the changes that are made are not necessarily quality driven. I think what's interesting is when I go to the Groths and I say, I need to purchase, or I would like to purchase this, say, piece of equipment or vineyard tool or whatever. It's a large purchase. It's going to be a couple $100,000. And the only question I ever get is this going to make, is this going to make better quality wine? And if the answer is yes, then I'm making that purchase. If it's something I'm buying because it'll make people happier or this and that, and then maybe it's a different discussion. But right. But I think if the motivation for what I'm doing is improving little increments in quality of the wine, then it's something that they're behind.
Speaking of taste of place, as I mentioned earlier, Clos du Val, Ted's previous winery, is in the middle of the revered Stag's Leap district, which is at the base of the Vaca mountain range, which features loam and clay sediments from the Napa River and volcanic soil deposits from the erosion of the mountains. Now, Ted is managing vineyards in the center of Napa Valley. It's wide open, has deeper soil and better water retention, so it's a bit different than Stag's Leap.
Here in Groth, we are in the center of Oakville, essentially. And it's very interesting because we have our Groth kind of terroir, our little piece of Oakville. But Stag's Leap is a sliver. It's the tiniest of AVAs. It's a very small appellation. There's not as much diversity. There's definitely differences between vineyard plots there. But here, there's a lot of diversity within Oakville. So I think it's really interesting because not only do we have our estate here, 100 acres that we're pulling, mostly Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc from, but I also have the opportunity to purchase from a few different sites within the Oakville AVA. So all the Cabernet that I'm purchasing is in Oakville, but some of it's on the western side, some of it's on the eastern side, and we're right in the middle. So for our reserve wines, they're all just our reserve block here at the home estate ranch. But for our Oakville Cabernet bottling, which is a little bit larger bottling, we'll incorporate some of our estate fruit with the fruit we purchase. And it's very interesting to me as these wines come in separately, they're like different expressions of Oakville. I'm getting a lot more like, sage and savory notes in the eastern part of Oakville vineyards from Alex Viborni that farms for us over by Silverado Trail. On the other side, where we get fruit from Ren Harris at Paradigm, that's intense fruit and much deeper characters. And they're like totally different wines. And then Groth is kind of its own little thing in the middle. And it makes it a lot of fun to take that blend. And then you've got this sort of, whole like mix. It's a blend of Oakville in one bottle for our Oakville Cabernet bottling.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's fun. It's really neat because it ends up making this classic textbook like steakhouse Cabernet, if you will. Like that's just a perfect Oakville Cabernet. That's not too one thing or another because it is a blend of all of Oakville.
Yeah. And it gives you flexibility, a little more flexibility. It's not going to be the same.
It is. And we've actually started, this was something started just before I got here, is just kind of for fun. We've taken some of those individual vineyard, purchased fruit vineyards and bottled like 200-300 cases of them separately, what we call our Oakville Neighbors series. So we're actually bottling individual like single vineyards from fruit that's not, ours, it's our purchase partners. But just to be able to have them as like a reference, like, oh, here's how those taste differently. And now we've opened that up when people come to the winery and we're doing tastings. It's just like another level of tasting to kind of be able to taste through Oakville and the different parts. And people can easily tell the difference in the styles of the wine.
Obviously, you like the challenge of going somewhere new and determining like, what can I do different here and how can I make it better? And that's got to be fascinating.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's actually, it's really interesting to come into a place, evaluate everything. One of the first things I did is, tried all the wines that were here, everything in the cellar. Is there anything short term that I can do? Like, is there any, little tweaks and fixes to anything that's currently out there? And then moving forward, here's some things I'll implement in the vineyard to, improve the quality. And then here's some maybe different barrels we'll be aging in or whatever it is. It's a fun challenge. It's really like a puzzle. How do we take all these pieces and make the best possible thing out of it? Yeah, it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. It's not really intentional. I don't think like I consciously, feel like I need to go to a new place and do some new thing all the time or whatever. You just happen to catch me every time I do it.
I was going to say, well, let's see how that goes in a couple of years.
Yeah, if we're meeting again somewhere else, that something happened. But for the most part, I think hopefully next time we come in, we can review the wines, a few years from now and talk about them and think back about this conversation.
Yeah. You have shown me some of the new equipment you've been buying here and pressers and fermenters. So you're making some changes there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think there are, to me, when you have reserve, like we didn't really talk about our lineup, but for Groth, the Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon is sort of our flagship. It's what we're known for. It was the first wine in California or maybe the United States to receive 100 points from Robert Parker, which is a big deal because back then it was like European wines are the perfect wines, and it was something that was really special for Groth to be involved in and get that honor. And that 1985 Cabernet Reserve was from the same block where we pull grapes from today for our Reserve Cabernet. So that is a very special bottling, and I think I probably spend a disproportionate amount of my time compared to how many cases we make and all that, working on that wine. Just, anything that I can think of, to really improve that wine. And I'm just really looking for that seamless, rich, very drinkable. At the end of the day, I just want someone to want another glass of that wine after they've finished their first one.
Well, I know I haven't finished mine yet and I can't wait to get back to it.
Okay.
You can bet I sure enjoyed finishing that glass. Later in the interview, you'll hear about Groth's Merlot and an interesting white blend he's created. Right now, I'll take a break and be right back with Ted Henry on the Wine Road.
Life is made up of everyday moments. The best breakfast pancakes and bedtime stories, staying up too late and getting up too early. As your public power provider, we at Sonoma Clean Power thrive on sustaining everyday moments, and we do so with a clean energy future in mind. We know these moments are cherished forever. Together, we can protect today's moments and those yet to come. Learn how your actions can make an even greater impact at poweringeverydaymoments.org.
Now, more with Ted Henry of Groth Vineyards and Winery. Tell me what's so unique about that vineyard. You mentioned that to me earlier, and it seems quite distinctive.
It is. I mean, so we're same section of Oakville. We're out in the middle of Oakville, but on our western border of our property is Con Creek, and Con Creek runs kind of north-southish. And it is along the creek that we see anomalies in the soil, basically just, it's kind of riverbed essentially. There's a lot of pebbles and rock and sandy soil deposits. There's one mineral called chert. I was looking for. There's usually a sample here, but chert it's like a fossilized seafloor, which is kind of interesting because when you're out in Oakville in the middle of a vineyard and you see a chunk of seafloor, it just seems kind of weird. But there's all those geologic wonders that happen over millions of years. Yes. So essentially, this was probably up on the hillsides here in the mountains. And this chert is just something you don't see very often throughout the valley here. But you do see it in certain sections and mostly near creeks like that. And so when you go out in the reserve block, you can kind of kick around under the vines and you'll see these big chunks of this red chert rock. And that minerality compared to where we are on maybe 50 yards to 100 yards away from that reserve block, we have Cabernet right on the east side of us. And those Cabernet grapes are in much more of a soil, like clay based soil. Clay and sort of a gravelly sort of overwash to it. And that's just totally different water holding capacity. It holds water, it holds nutrients more. The vines need less irrigation. They take longer to ripen. There's a whole different kind of animal there. And so you could see it. You could be out here in the growing season, walk across, one side of the winery, look at the vines, look at the other side where the reserve is, and you'd think you're in two different wine regions in the world, right? And they're that different for the same grape and the same rootstock and clone and stuff like that. So you have everything being the same. The soil is what's completely different.
I love how diverse it can be, out of the same clone, the same grape. Yeah. And what you were saying is, which most wineries do, is the reserve is the best blocks around the whole vineyard, and they find the best juice that came in, and okay, well, this is going to be our reserve, but your reserve is all situated in one spot.
It's always right there. And I think that was interesting because, I was very familiar with the Groth brand, the Groth wines. I've had some, several of them over the years. And I don't think I understood the reserve story really before I came here, because the difference is pretty stark. Whereas, like you mentioned, a reserve wine's usually just, this is a reserve. I mean, it's the winemaker's choice of the best wines, the best barrels, whatever it is. And coming from one site, I think one little block within, our estate is very interesting differentiation. And the legacy of having 40 vintages of that from this one site was what makes Groth Reserve, right? And also coming here as a winemaker, I'm thinking, okay, that's a good story, but I want to see this proved out. Is this real, or is this like just, some marketing spin or whatever? And when I brought the first vintage, brought those wines in 2021, as soon as it hit the tank, I'm tasting them, the reserve block versus a block that's a few yards away, and night and day. I could tell immediately the chemistry is different, the flavor is different, everything about these things are different. And there was no doubt in my mind after, these wines were fermented and getting down to barrel, that the reserve was a special thing, that it was very different, that it was definitely where the quality is. And it's a rare thing. It's kind of neat. It's kind of neat to have, but it's nice to have that identified, so many years ago, that was a special plot, that there was something special about that area, because that could have taken years for someone to figure out. A lot of times wineries practice with different, we're going to bottle this section this year and that's it. And then maybe after 10 years, they figure out, oh yeah, this is definitely the best spot. but they were able to figure that out quite early on and give us a nice little legacy with it.
And it removes the task. You don't have to try to figure out what the reserve is going to be that year.
I love it. That's the best part. It's whatever's easier for me is always good.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, hey, sure.
You kind of touched upon the Cab's Reserve Cabernet, and it is a beautiful wine and easy to drink. It's not an in-your-face Napa Cabernet, but you say it will certainly hold up.
It will hold up. I think what's nice about this wine, and when you look at chemistry is not everything, but it has a nice level of tannin and structure to it, but it's very balanced because it has a lot of anthocyanin, which is like the color components that are in grape skins. And because of the soils that we were talking about, these vines produce smaller clusters with smaller berries, and there's a lot of this skin that has a lot of color in it. And color is not just the red kind of hue, reddish purple that you look at in the glass, but that also is kind of the general name we use for these anthocyanin compounds that are reacting with tannins and, kind of making that structure of the wine. So the Reserve tends to have a lot of heft to it, like as far as structure and weight and longevity, that comes from that tannin that's there, but has this balance to it that makes it so that it's not a heavy wine. I really don't ever want to have this be like a syrupy, thick wine that's like has a nice deliciousness to it, but is hard to drink. Never want it to be hard to drink. That's kind of my goal.
How would you describe the Cabernet Sauvignon?
So the Oakville Cabernet Sauvignon is a blend of all the parts of Oakville. So it really does give us...
That's what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it really gives us all of those components. So there's a little bit of this olive character and bay leaf that we get from some of our vineyard, basically east side growers. It has kind of, there's some of that classic rot that's in the Reserve, a little bit of that in there. And then there's the Merlot too. So there's quite a bit of Merlot, usually 10, 12, 14% Merlot in the Oakville Cabernet that is, giving you that plum and kind of lighter style, but red pretty fruit. So all those things add together. It's like kind of that synergistic thing where, it's more than just the parts, you throw together. It actually kind of comes into this beautiful, solid wine that is just what I call like a textbook Oakville Cabernet. I do these like wine tasting groups sometimes and things like that. And sometimes people say, okay, well, bring a whatever, And it's like if someone says, well, I want a classic Oakville Cabernet because I want to teach these people what Oakville Cabernet tastes like. That's what I would use the Oakville Groth Cabernet for. Because I think it's textbook Oakville in general in a bottle, which I think is kind of nice.
Great. It's typical in Napa Valley to have Sauvignon Blanc in your portfolio. Ted barrel ages his Sauv Blanc for 3 months in neutral old French barrels that give it a tasty hint of richness. He had me try it, and I enjoyed its juicy flavor that leaned more citrusy than grassy. Then he shared a Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend. That one featured a wonderful mouthfeel with enhanced character.
So it's kind of the winemaker's fun wine. Mm-hmm. Some of this is going into concrete fermenters, concrete eggs for fermentation. A good chunk of it is getting destemmed and crushed and pumped over as if it was a red wine with cold temperature as like a skin contact maneuver to be able to get extraction, a little bit of phenols from the skins while it's doing that. And I think when we were, tasting through this, you were saying like you can almost pick up a little bit of that grape kind of flavor, grape skin.
Yeah. When you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that's just really neat. And again, I want to have this wine. This is sort of our reserve, if you will, Sauvignon Blanc. It's our best Sauvignon Blanc block from estate. It's only estate, and our Semillon that we grow on the property. And I want it to be different, where the Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc is just fresh and bright and great for any meal, sitting outside, mowing your lawn, doesn't matter. This wine, statewide, is a little bit more serious. There's more complexity there. It almost I think of it more like when I'm tasting it, that it's almost less Sauvignon Blanc and more like a Rhone white blend or something like that. Like something that's like you might have to think twice, like, what is this exactly I'm drinking? It's a really interesting white wine, right, but it's not textbook Sauv Blanc from Napa Valley, which is what I wanted to do. So it's very, very much its own thing, and I think it's got a lot of character and a lot of fun and great response. And as far as when I've been tasting this with people tend to really like it.
Yeah, that little bit of Semillon really makes a difference, doesn't it? It enhances that Sauv Blanc to be something a little different.
It does. It's very interesting because the Semillon, so I picked the Semillon 19 bricks, very low sugar. So it was only the Semillon portion of this is like an 11% alcohol wine. And but it's kind of oily and like almost this fat kind of oily character to it. So it really enhances the texture of the wine when you add it to the Sauvignon Blanc. So it's a very convenient and effective tool to like kind of, really bump up that blend and make it interesting.
And the barrel aging certainly rounds out that mouthfeel.
So this one actually will barrel age for a good maybe 8 months. And so it'll see a lot more of that evolution with the lees as it's coming in. So this is the 21 which is already bottled, but the 22 is still in barrel, and it will be until May or so. So it is, that wine is still evolving, and I think that that's all part of the magic of it is again give it something a little bit more rich and interesting.
And you make a Chardonnay.
We make a Chardonnay. So we have a property called Hillview Vineyard that again the Groths purchased this in the 80s, so it's been around. It's a Groth long-standing vineyard for Chardonnay, and it makes beautiful Chardonnay. It's the oldest grapevines that Groth owns, so they're big, robust old vines, and it's not producing a whole lot of tons per acre. It's fairly low yielding, and it's in the reason that we have the Chardonnay down there is that Oakville just seemed to be a little too warm for Chardonnay. So Oak Knoll's, not a long distance as the crow flies from here, but it's enough where it is significantly cooler nights, things like that retain a little bit more acidity, and the Chardonnay just tends to have more of that kind of classic Chardonnay character. The Chard I do with a very limited amount of oak, so it's like 15% new wood. It's all oak fermented, but only a small amount new. And we really limit malolactic, so we're kind of trying to go for that style. And it is a single vineyard wine, so I have to kind of remind people that when we're tasting Groth Chardonnay, the only Chardonnay that Groth makes is Hillview single vineyard estate Chardonnay. Which is kind of interesting, and it's a small production, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 cases a year, and it's kind of a special wine. It tends to be overshadowed by the Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauv Blanc, which have always been our main kind of wines. But there's it's a really really nice Chard, and I think we definitely want people to try it.
Yeah, you give it its own personality.
Yeah, it definitely does. We're looking at trying to showcase what I was talking about with the estate thing and the single vineyard aspect of it. So we're probably going to be changing the label up a little bit because it's had the same label for, but something to showcase that, hey, this is a really special single, origin Chardonnay, and try and put a little bit of spotlight on it because, like I said, it's been harder to get people to, remember that we're doing the Chardonnay because we're always looking at Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc.
You can almost call it old vine too. It's getting there.
You can call it whatever you want. There's no legal definition of old vine. But yeah,
you want to feel good about it.
Exactly. No, it's great because they're really well balanced. The Chardonnay vines are one of these things where you hear this all the time. It's like vines reach a point where they start to just self-regulate, and they don't produce as much fruit as they used to, but it's consistently really great quality. So we're kind of letting that ride and going with it.
Yeah, it's so interesting how vines take care of themselves. Whatever happens, whatever you throw at them, they seem to be able to adjust and just keep growing. I mean, I guess that's why they can climb a tree and do whatever they can do and live for hundreds of years if you let them go. Oh,
absolutely. It's amazing how hardy a grapevine is. People always ask me this because people come in from, all over the country and stuff and like, wow, why can't I grow a Cabernet in where, Michigan or wherever they want to live? And you can. It just makes terrible wine, but you can grow a grapevine almost anywhere. I mean, the things are completely just like they're hard to kill. That they're robust. It's just when you let them do whatever they want, they don't produce the best wine because that's not their main job.
Right.
But yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add about your somewhat new position here?
No. I mean, I thanks for coming out and following up with part 3. I think it is something I'm excited about, and I've been here long enough to 2 vintages here at Groth to see what it's really about and what the vineyards can produce, what the potential is, and also the commitment of the Groth family and Suzanne and Dennis that are running the show out here and providing me with everything I can, everything I need to do the best possible wines in the future here at Groth.
I love seeing these old family-run wineries continue on, so props to them for hanging in there and doing such a great job.
Absolutely. No, exactly. They're well aware that they're kind of, the outlier now these days, because I think every day we read some sale from either a conglomerate, a big wine company gobbling something up, or whatever it is. And so there's fewer and fewer family-owned and run companies out here, and they're happy to do it and glad to do it and enjoy the lifestyle. And I could see it. You could see it when you talk to them that this is something they're really passionate about and love doing, and it's kind of infectious, and we like it.
You can read the family's interesting story, told by owner Dennis Groth, on their website, grothwines.com. He shares how they went all in without a backup plan. A prayer or two may have accompanied that investment. I really enjoy talking with Ted each time I've done so. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can see their wines and Ted's plans for the future again at grothwines.com. Today's episode was written, recorded, and produced by me. Please subscribe to On the Wine Road podcast so each episode will automatically appear on your favorite platform. And I appreciate a positive review if that's an option. Find images, wine news, trivia, and more interviews at onthewineroad.us. I'm on Facebook as On the Wine Road and Instagram as JD Wine Road. I'll talk to you again soon as I share more from my travels on the Wine Road.